Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Hello, everybody. How are we doing on this fine Saturday? You are listening to the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host for today, Wyatt Krieger. We've got a great episode for you today with the NFL Draft. Finally, less than 1 week away. I am so excited. We've got some other news to get to before that. So today, I'm going to talk about the NFL Draft that is 1 week away. I'm really starting to get anxious, I'll be honest. I think the fans are anxious. Every year we say, I think this is the most highly anticipated draft ever, but I really think this one is, with all the combination of factors, with the COVID-19 opt-outs, the expanded pool of players, the lack of film on some of these guys, the incredible run of quarterbacks that I think we're going to see at the top of this draft. All of that, I think, is going to lead to one of the best drafts ever. Again, you are listening to the GSMC Football Podcast presented by the Golden State Media Concepts. As always, follow us on Twitter at GSMC_football. We're going to have updates on this year's draft during all of next week's draft coverage week. Follow me on Twitter at WKrieger3. And be sure to like, download, and subscribe to our podcasts on all different platforms: Spotify, Apple Music, Google Play, whatever you use to listen to podcasts. I have another mock draft today. I think people are done with mock drafts starting next week on Monday, but guess what? I'm going to do one. I think next week is the cutoff, and I've got my second mock draft of the offseason. I wanted to wait till as far as I possibly could until the draft, just because we have a better view and understanding of where these teams are going to go. And I'm going to do 2 rounds this time instead of just one, so a lot more players to look at. And I'm really not sure how fans and the overall public views mock drafts overall. But at the end of the day, I like doing them. I think enough people like them because they're always coming out every year. And that's all people want to read. And it's fun. People want to look at the draft, scroll to where their teams picks, and then just go from there and then get an idea and be like, okay, I can see this guy on my team, even though they're probably 70% wrong half the time, but who cares? They're mock drafts. Mock drafts are fun. So last week I discussed my top 10 receivers, and this week I'm going to break down the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL. But first I want to kind of discuss some NFL news of the week. So there's been a developing story in the NFL, and that is jersey numbers. So jersey numbers might see a change with a lot of notable players this year in the NFL. So the NFL is starting to allow players to wear numbers that are outside of their normal position range. And because normally each position has a specific range of numbers, quarterbacks can wear 1 through, I think, 15. Running backs are supposed to wear 20s and 30s, numbers in the 20s and 30s. Receivers in the teens and also the 80s. You see a lot of offensive linemen are mainly in the 70s, 80s, defensive linemen in the 90s, goes so on and so forth. I'm not sure about the specific stipulations for the numbers, but it's normally set for every position, and now they're kind of starting to change that. So there's some weird rules, and it's caused a little bit of controversy. Why has it caused controversy? Because the NFL's most notable player hates it. Tom Brady spoke out yesterday on Instagram pretty much skill position players and defensive backs are allowed to wear numbers 1 through 49 now, and also 80 through 89. And linebackers are allowed to wear numbers 1 through 59 and 90 through 99. So we're going to see a lot of running backs, receivers, linebackers, cornerbacks switch to their old college numbers. I think the single-digit appeal is real, and it has a little bit of more branding value, I guess, just having a single-digit number. And also guys have had single-digit numbers for their whole careers. So I think this will be pretty cool overall. But Tom Brady posted an Instagram story saying, why don't we all just wear colored jerseys? What's even the point of having numbers anymore? And I guess the original reason that the NFL had decided to make specific positions have to wear numbers is because quarterbacks and offensive linemen currently use defenders' jersey numbers to kind of identify which position they play. So if a defender's threatening to blitz, they can easily tell if that's a cornerback or a linebacker or a D lineman. But now with this change, I think this can cause some confusion, and Brady definitely thinks that this can cause some confusion for quarterbacks and their blockers as they see the defense. So I still like this initiative from the NFL. I'm not sure why they decided to do this now. It was likely more fan engagement overall, and I don't know. I think this is going to be pretty cool. I think you look at guys like Dalvin Cook, Zeke Elliott. Dalvin Cook goes back to his number from Florida State that he also wore in high school, number 4. I think that would look really good on a jersey. Zeke Elliott going back to number 15. I think that would look really good on a jersey. Jalen Ramsey has discussed interest in going back to his old numbers in number 8. Robert Woods wants to go back from USC. Derrick Henry might like to do it, going back to number 2 when he won the Heisman at Alabama. So just another slight storyline, another slight development, but something to look for as you need to know what numbers your team and your players are wearing. So that'll be pretty cool. I also have a little bit of a Deshaun Watson update, as there was some substantial news this week, I would say, more substantial than the previous weeks. So pretty much 22 women. I've been updating this on the show for the last month now, but 22 women had filed a lawsuit against one of the NFL's brightest young stars in Deshaun Watson. They had accused him of sexual misconduct during massage sessions in 2020 and in early 2021. Watson's lawyer, Rusty Hardin, came out earlier this week and said pretty much that all 22 women are lying. He pretty much flat out said that. And that was something that he hadn't done before. They had danced around trying to say, my client is innocent. These are exaggerations. These are fabrications of the story. But now he's saying they are lying. A lot of legal experts, I did some reading about this. A lot of legal experts say that this kind of tests the limits of plausibility for Deshaun Watson's case and shows just how difficult this has been for attorneys to defend in the court of public opinion. When you're dealing with people's opinions and people's feelings, emotions, one side of the story compared to the other, I think this is really hard to do. And when you're going to come out and say straight up that these people, all these women lied, 22 women that don't know each other are all lying about this story, it's hard to believe. And it's not only hard to believe, but it can cause some controversy in your overall case. But if you really think that and you're Deshaun Watson's lawyer and you've done all that research and the evidence and you've looked at the evidence, then by all means, defend your client. But throughout this whole case, it's kind of been interesting to see Watson's side handle all of these allegations, Watson kind of remaining silent and not speaking out at all. And I don't know, because Harden's speaking out every week for his client, and you've got both sides just completely butting heads here. And I just don't know what to believe. I really still don't know what to believe. I can't wait for whatever these trials or legal proceedings may be in the court of law. But I really just don't know what to believe. Are all 22 women lying? I find that hard to believe. I could see some of them fabricating their stories. But why does Deshaun Watson need 22 different masseuses? I think that in and of itself is somewhat of a red flag here. And it's just a difficult situation for both sides to be in, and it's something to monitor because this argument is at a good old-fashioned stalemate right now, and there's a lot of serious implications with these allegations. So it's hard to believe that Deshaun Watson could be out of the NFL for the foreseeable future, especially when all of this trade buzz, demanding a trade, and all the Texans drama was happening throughout this offseason. And just for this to happen to him, I feel bad for him. But at the same time, if any of this stuff is true, then he doesn't belong in the NFL. So Deshaun Watson, who knows if he'll play this year? Maybe we'll know more information after the draft as the dust kind of settles around the league and as the offseason start to kind of pick up. But Deshaun Watson, man, I hope everything is okay. So there's some other new storylines in the NFL. Robert Saleh, he said he's ready to develop a young quarterback. He was asked about the pressure that you kind of get while adding a young quarterback as the Jets look to add Zach Wilson in this year's draft. That is not a guaranteed thing, but that is just what most of the league believes, and that's what I believe because of what Zach Wilson has been able to do this offseason. And just as scouts have gotten a greater look at him, they've kind of defined that Zach Wilson is the second best quarterback in this draft and has some of the highest potential we've seen out of the quarterback position in a while. So he says Saleh says there's no pressure with a rookie quarterback. I think he is going to be able to put all that outside noise in the rear view, and Robert Saleh is a great leader and will be able to put the right infrastructure around a young rookie quarterback. That's what I think. So Robert Saleh is okay with drafting a quarterback. Cliff Kingsbury called out the Rams for doing a draft from a beach house in L.A. And I thought this was kind of funny because he cited how in Hard Knocks, back when the L.A. Rams were on Hard Knocks, Sean McVay was they were doing a profile of Sean McVay. He was at his nice house in L.A. with his wife, and he just got in the pool and took his shirt off, and everyone was like, okay, that was cool, great. Sean McVay got to take his shirt off. He's jacked. Sean McVay definitely was very willing to do that in the HBO series Hard Knocks. So Cliff Kingsbury kind of pointed fun at him for that. He said he just wanted to do it from the beach house so he could take his shirt off like in Hard Knocks. But that's pretty cool. Just doing a mock draft from a beach house, or doing the real draft from the beach house, I think is really cool. Cliff Kingsbury called out the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos are high on Drew Lock. They said that they are high on Drew Lock, but they still want to add a quarterback for competition. So now I don't know how hard they're going to be targeting someone in the first round. Like, I think they're still trying to kind of keep that under wraps, but I really don't know why they're high on Drew Lock. I would be forcing the narrative that they want a new quarterback, and I think they're going to be a team that is aggressive on draft night for trading up. Whether it's in the first or second round, I think they want to get a guy to bring in some competition, and you have to for Vic Fangio's sake and for Drew Lock's sake because he has not shown enough in his first two seasons for me. So overall, you got to give Vic Fangio a better chance with the Broncos as his second year as head coach. I think you can't go into it with having just Drew Lock. I wanted to give the Browns another shout out for their signing of Jadeveon Clowney. I thought that was a really good signing. I made that point last week, but overall, no one was taking a chance on him. It was taking way too long. Myles Garrett loves this signing. He thinks they're going to be a scary tandem together. I think this Browns defensive unit, depending on how it shapes out in the draft, because they're in a good position to get a lot of really quality players and a lot of players that have great value for where they're picking in the draft at 26. So I think after the draft settles and once we get a look at these rosters as a whole, I think it's going to be a no-brainer that the Browns have one of the best defensive units in the league, and they will have a top 10, if not top 8 unit this year in the NFL. So now I'm going to get into my mock draft 2.0. It is officially time. These will be my official predictions for the 2021 NFL Draft. This is really just my gut feeling, my heart of hearts, where I think these teams will decide to go. And I will also be doing 2 rounds instead of 1. I have a few more trade-ups in this draft, a lot more drama, and twice the fun. Because guess what? Last week we had 1 round. This week we have 2 rounds. I also just needed to talk about how crazy this quarterback draft is going to be. I feel like I say this every week, but there are 4 extremely talented quarterbacks that I just can't see going outside of the top 10 to 14 picks, maybe 15. Someone always falls, so this will probably be an egg on my face come next Thursday. But I don't know, these 4 quarterbacks, I feel like we're just, when I'm debating where they should go and who's better, I'm starting to just talk myself out of any of these guys, whether it's Mac Jones, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, or Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, obviously, not really, because everyone knows he's going to the Jags. But those other 4 guys, I think these guys are all really solid quarterbacks, and I think any of them could be stars. It all depends on who goes to the best situation. And we have question marks with the Jaguars and the Jets. They have new regimes, but it looks like they're trending in the right direction, and who knows how Urban Meyer and Robert Saleh will handle developing a young quarterback. But I think the 49ers could get any of those guys remaining, whether it's Lance, Jones, or Fields, and I think any of them would thrive in Kyle Shanahan's offense. And then with the majority of the rest of the teams, it's kind of a big toss-up as far as the quarterbacks go, so who's drafting these guys? It's somewhat of a toss-up. You could go either way depending on who's picking them. Like, obviously, if you're with the Patriots, you're in a great spot. If the Falcons are drafting you, you might not know. There's a little uncertainty there. But either way, it's going to be very interesting to see where these quarterbacks fall. Because I really think this is one of the best quarterback drafts. We're going to look back at this as one of the best quarterback drafts ever. I really think that. So I'm going to quickly get into my first 5 picks before I get into a commercial break. So my top 10 has a lot of trade scenarios involved and a lot of different picks compared to my mock draft last week. But let's get into it. We start off the same. Trevor Lawrence going to the Jags. Don't overthink it. He's going to be a stud. News last week kind of blew up about his comments about how his dad and him were saying that if Trevor Lawrence doesn't win a Super Bowl, he will be fine. I think that's just a lot of people took that the wrong way, and that's constant pre-draft banter, just taking a quote, twisting it to its absolute extreme, and then pretty much trying to say that Trevor Lawrence doesn't care about football, which is definitely just not true. I think Trevor Lawrence was trying to say that he's proud of what he's been able to do. He's got a great head on his shoulders, and I think this is a great mindset to have. Obviously, you'd want a guy like Joe Burrow, who had a quote this week that was incredible because he has a huge scar on his knee from his knee surgery, and he pretty much said, you need scars to win in this league, and you need to have scars to come back from. And Joe Burrow kind of just shows that tenacity and the need and want to win a Super Bowl. But Trevor Lawrence, I think he definitely still really, really wants to win a Super Bowl. I just think it's not the end-all, be-all for him. And he's going to be great. He's going to be one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen coming out of the draft. So Trevor Lawrence going to the Jags again. Zach Wilson's also going to the Jets again. I hope the Jets break this quarterback curse that they have. Zach Wilson looks better the more I watch, to be honest. And Mac Jones, I have him going to the 49ers right after Zach Wilson to the Jets. I had Justin Fields going to the 49ers last year, but there's just too much buzz around Mac Jones. And I think Mac Jones processes things a bit quicker on the field compared to Fields and Lance. He was really consistent. That's the one thing I think you can knock on about Fields and maybe Lance is the overall just consistency. Justin Fields had a really bad game against. He had a really bad game against Northwestern, and overall, I think Mac Jones has the experience in the SEC, has the wins under his belt, and I think the 49ers want to hit the ground running with this rookie quarterback, whoever it may be. With the 4th pick, I have the Falcons taking Kyle Pitts from Florida. He's too good to pass on. He's been my favorite draft crush in this entire draft throughout the whole process. Here's a crazy stat. Kyle Pitts had a faster 40-yard dash than Travis Etienne, the Clemson running back, who's projected to go late first, early second round. I think that is just crazy for his overall size and stature. And you're going to be able to use him so many different ways in the red zone. The Falcons, I had them drafting a quarterback last week, but overall you have Matt Ryan with at least 2 more good seasons left. I think they can get the most out of him without having to draft a quarterback right now. Even though this quarterback draft is loaded and you could get a really solid future piece with Matt or with a guy like Trey Lance. But overall, taking Kyle Pitts would be too good to pass on. Now I also have the Bengals selecting Jamar Chase. Another guy I think is too good to pass on this spot. And overall, a lot of people have the Bengals drafting O-line, but I don't know. I think if you have Jamar Chase and you have a chance to pair him with Joe Burrow, you can get some of that O-line help in the second round of the draft. But because they have an early second round pick, Jamar Chase is just going to be so good. And when you talk about mossing defensive backs, Jamar Chase is going to do that to everyone. And I think he's going to do that right away. Just his size, his speed, his freakish athleticism, his jumping ability. He just looks like a polished wide receiver already. And if Joe Burrow gets him, along with T. Higgins, who already started to show some great signs last year, wow, that offense will be humming. So before I get into the rest of my first round of my mock draft, I wanted to get into a quick commercial break. Once again, you are listening to the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host, Wyatt Krieger. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at GSMC_football. Follow us on Facebook. Visit our website at gsmcpodcast.com/sports, or you can just enter gsmcpodcast.com and look at all of the content Golden State Media Concepts has to provide. Once again, I'm Wyatt Krieger. I will be right back.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
All right, we have the rest of my first round mock draft, Wyatt's Mock Draft 2.0. You are listening to the GSMC Football Podcast presented by the Golden State Media Concepts. That was our first commercial break of the episode. I'm Wyatt Krieger again, and we are doing mock drafts. We are once again doing mock drafts. I just had my first 5 picks outlined for you guys, and let's go. So we had the first 5 picks already happen. Trevor Lawrence 1, Zach Wilson 2, Mac Jones to the 49ers at 3. Just too much buzz around him. The Falcons taking the unicorn in Kyle Pitts, and the Bengals selecting another guy who I think is unicorn in Jamar Chase. So we quickly head to number 6 overall, the Miami Dolphins. And I have them selecting Jalen Waddle. I had Devontae Smith last week. I think Devontae Smith's the best receiver in the draft. But I think all this talk about his size, even though I don't think it matters, I just have a gut feeling that for some reason Devontae's going to slide past these 2 guys. And I just have I really just more have a gut feeling that Waddle will go higher than expected just because of what he was able to do in both 2019 and the start of 2020. What people saw, the flashes, the overall potential, I think might be a little higher than Devontae Smith, but I think Devontae Smith is, again, the best receiver in the draft. But the Dolphins, getting Jalen Waddle would be huge for them. The speed, the way he turns the corner is just unlike anyone I've seen in a while. And yeah, he's going to contribute right away for Tua. He's going to be a reliable target for Tua. And I like that pick for the Dolphins, an overall fit. I think Tua needs to start throwing the ball downfield more, and what better way to throw the ball downfield than getting a guy who can get open downfield. So Jalen Waddle going to number 6 to the Dolphins. My first trade up, I want to get a little siren going for my first trade up. There is one thing I wanted to get right. I talked about Joe Burrow in those first 5 picks. I messed up the quote that he said because he had a quote about his scar, and it was too good of a quote to just kind of paraphrase, so I got the quote right here. Joe Burrow said they were asking him about his scar on his knee from his ACL and reconstructive knee surgery. Joe Burrow said, "If I died without scars, that just means I did nothing worth fighting for." Whew. That sent chills down my spine when I first heard it. I love Joe Burrow. I love that mindset. But again, nothing wrong with Trevor Lawrence's overall mindset about football and about his career. Just because championships aren't everything. If you're an all-pro player and you go to the Pro Bowl and you do everything you can year in and year out and you can't win the Super Bowl, that's fine. And I think Trevor Lawrence would be okay with that. So sorry to interrupt, but that, because I have my first trade up in Wyatt's mock draft 2.0, and that's the Patriots trading up with the Lions to take Justin Fields. This is a really intriguing pick to me. A lot of people think that Trey Lance's overall skill set and history at North Dakota State would better fit in Bill Belichick's offense, but Justin Fields would be too good to pass on at 7 for Bill Belichick. And to sit behind Cam Newton with that similar physical statures, but Justin Fields is not just your everyday mobile quarterback. He is a pocket passer. He throws the ball with great speed, great touch too on a lot of his deep balls, and he can throw it in the seam, throw it to the sidelines. And he's just a freak athlete. He can run so fast, and he's so big that I just think this is a no-brainer for the Patriots and all the things Bill Belichick could do with him. Who knows what they want to do with Cam? Bill Belichick has never taken a quarterback in the first round, but that this is the offseason of a lot of firsts for Bill Belichick with all the offseason trades. So I wouldn't put anything past him. You can maybe sit behind Cam for some time, and then if Cam really doesn't prove that he has what it takes, then you go with Fields and you go start the new regime. But I think this would be an excellent pick for New England. I have another trade up, back-to-back trade ups. How about that? First time in Wyatt mock draft history, I've had back-to-back trade ups. So number 8, I have a trade up. So the Lions traded back. They're a team that is definitely looking to trade back in this draft just because of the overall roster needs that they have on their team. But another team that has a lot of roster needs and has already came out and said they are willing to take calls for trade back options is the Carolina Panthers at number 8. So I have the Giants trading up with the Panthers, who are rumored to trade down, like I said, and taking Devontae Smith, that number 1 wide receiver in my draft. What a steal this would be in the NFL draft for the Giants, because you added Kenny Golladay. You have Darius Slayton, who was a serviceable number 2 last season. Even though he was playing number 1, he can be a serviceable number 2 by all means. And you add Devontae Smith to that, then you have absolutely no excuses for Danny Jones. And that's why I think they should do this, because the excuses have all been, where are the weapons? And you have Saquon, Kenny Golladay, Devontae Smith all on the same team, on the same offense. Ooh. I mean, Danny Jones has to light it up. He has to light it up. If not, then you got to start finding a new quarterback, because Devontae Smith is too good to go later than 8. I think he could fall to around 10. And the reason this kind of trade up makes sense is because you don't know what the Cowboys are going to do at 10. They're obviously eyeing a quarterback, but Jerry Jones loves his offensive weapons. And if you add Devontae Smith to that receiving core, then you can somehow move on from Amari Cooper's contract down the road. So I think this would be a safe move for the Giants to get possible future Hall of Fame wide receiver, because we've never seen someone have the season that Devontae Smith had last year. And people love talking about his size, how he's 6 foot, 165 pounds. Will Zalatoris that competed in the Masters 2 weeks ago, the really lanky golfer, is 6'1", 160, so just comparable measurements. Devontae Smith was just absolutely roasting the best cornerbacks in the country every week last year in the college football. He made Shaun Wade, the cornerback from Ohio State, look like a third-round draft pick, even though he was projected to be first, and I don't have him in either of these first 2 rounds. I haven't seen him. I've seen him start to slide, and maybe that has a lot to do with Devontae Smith's performance against him, because he could not keep up with him. I don't think a lot of guys will be able to, and the Giants, this would be an excellent pick for them, trading up for Devontae Smith. So number 9, the Broncos are in great position. They have one of the 4 guys still on the board, and they are going to go take their chance with Trey Lance, the quarterback out of North Dakota State. I think this is a great fit for Trey Lance. The Broncos finally get their quarterback. They will have a great quarterback competition with Drew Lock and Trey Lance this fall, if that is the case. And overall, I love this fit. I think the overall offense they want to run, they have good weapons in Denver, and guys like KJ Hamler, Cortland Sutton. You have 2 really good running backs in Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon. And I think this team is going to be, it's going to have a defensive identity, but if you add a quarterback like Trey Lance, they're just become that much more dynamic, and that makes that NFC or AFC West conference even more intriguing if you add a young quarterback like Trey Lance. A lot of people think he's a project. I just don't know. His mechanics are really good and look really experienced on film, and a lot of that probably has to do with the North Dakota State coaching staff that implements a lot of pro-style concepts in their offense, but I don't know. It may take some time. It may take some time for Drew Lock to be the starter, but I would see this as a Drew Lock first 2-3 weeks guy, and then they lose 2 out of 3 or go 0-3, and then it's Trey Lance time. So are the Broncos taking Trey Lance, the quarterback out of North Dakota State? And number 10, I have the Cowboys selecting the best cornerback available, and that is Patrick Surtain, the cornerback from Alabama. I mean, the Cowboys need a guy like this. A young lockdown corner would be a solid selection, and he's really just a smart corner, and he played against the best of the best in the SEC. Always just kind of mirrors and sticks to whoever he's covering. That's what I noticed about him the most when watching his film, is just he is always right on the hip of the receiver. And not too many interceptions to his name, but just so many pass breakups, so much just coverage, and just his presence on the field, I think, is greater than all these other cornerbacks and maybe all these other defensive players. But Patrick Surtain, you can never have too many cornerbacks in the NFL, in this modern-day passing league, and the Cowboys need Patrick Surtain. So now we had that trade back with the Panthers at number 8. So they are picking 11th now, taking the Giants pick. And this would be an ideal scenario for the Panthers because they are getting Penei Sewell, arguably the best offensive line in the draft. I think he's the second best. It's 1A and 1B in my mind with Rashawn Slater. But this would be the ideal scenario for the Panthers. You get to trade back, get some more draft capital, and let teams take the quarterbacks, take the high-skill position players, and then you get the foundational piece on your offensive line that you've needed for quite some time, and that Sam Darnold definitely needs in Carolina. So Penei Sewell, I think he's really violent. He's aggressive. He's going to be a starter day one and will be a starter for the next 10 years. When you look at just overall all-pro ability, I would rather have Rashawn Slater, but Penei Sewell has been deemed as legit a draft prospect as they can be at this point in the draft. So I have Penei Sewell going number 11 to Carolina. Really going to need to protect Sam Darnold because he hasn't had that yet, and I've talked about that each week, but he hasn't had that. So the Eagles, their trade back with the Dolphins earlier this offseason, they are picking at number 12. I have them selecting Caleb Farley, the cornerback out of Virginia Tech. I think Eagles fans would be infuriated after this just because they wanted a receiver. I could see them trading back from 12 and getting one of those second-tier receivers, talking about guys like Kadarius Toney and Rashad Bateman, but I don't know. I think they have too many holes in the roster, and cornerback is a big need, and just the potential of Caleb Farley I think is too good to pass up on at 12 because there's some injury concerns, but just the freak athleticism, the blazing speed, his potential for big plays in the NFL wherever he's lined up, and would be a pillar for future defensive success in Philadelphia. I have the Chargers at 13 grabbing Rashawn Slater, the offensive tackle I love out of Northwestern. I love this fit. I think he's the more athletic tackle. I think his experience in the Big Ten is going to prove to be much more useful than Penei Sewell's experience in the Pac-12, going up against guys like Chase Young on Ohio State, and just Big Ten defensive fronts week in and week out, and he really proved that he belongs, and he's as good as they come, is as strong as they come, and I think he's going to be a future All-Pro player. I really do think that, and you need a guy like this for a young quarterback like Justin Herbert, just to kind of have that relationship, that continuity, that, all right, you've got my back, I've got yours, let's go do this thing, and I think the Chargers have that with Rashawn Slater. Are the Vikings selecting the best pass rusher available in my eyes, and that's Jalen Phillips. The Vikings' biggest priorities this draft are improving both fronts. They have not been too solid in that department the last 2 seasons. The pass rush has really taken a step back after a bunch of trades, and you need those fronts to be good if you have Kirk Cousins as your quarterback and you want to win, especially the offensive front, because Kirk Cousins is not a guy that you can hand the ball to and let the play break down and be like, all right, just go make something happen, Kirk. That's not going to happen with Kirk Cousins. It's been proven. They've tried it. Everyone knows this, I think, who watches the NFL. Kirk Cousins is what he is at this point, and you need to have those fronts solidified. So although they don't get an offensive lineman, I think that grabbing Jalen Phillips, one of the premier pass rushers in this draft, would be a huge get. Would be a huge get for Minnesota. So I also think it's kind of crazy how there's no premier top 10 edge rushers projected to go in this draft. That's kind of a big deal because normally you see guys like Myles Garrett every year, Bradley Chubb, guys that are sticking out and are like, this is a top 10 pick. You got to get this guy early and you might have to trade up for him. But no, I don't. Just maybe if it's the COVID opt-outs and a lot of the edge rushers didn't play in 2020, so it's just a lot of question marks. But it's pretty crazy how there's no premier one guy that you can point to. I think Jalen Phillips is the best, but you never know with all of these players available. So the Lions traded back with the Patriots, and they're now picking at 15. And I have them grabbing Christian Darrisaw. They're another team that needs to build up both fronts. And Christian Darrisaw, the offensive tackle out of Virginia Tech, is fantastic. They need to have a solid offensive lineman. Haven't had a really stud lineman in a while. And Darrisaw is really smart. He's athletic. He's going to be incredible in pass protection for Jared Goff. And you need to protect Jared Goff because he's pretty much a statue back there. He's not the most mobile quarterback. And he's really agile for his size. I think he can create enough holes in the defense in the run game. And overall, his just athletic ability and football instincts are superior to a lot of the other offensive line prospects. So this is a great value pick for the Lions, trading back and taking Christian Darrisaw at number 15. So my last 10 picks, I had the Dolphins taking Jalen Waddle, Patriots trading up with the Lions to take Justin Fields, the quarterback, Giants trading up to take Devontae Smith, the Broncos selecting Trey Lance, the quarterback out of North Dakota State, the Cowboys selecting Patrick Surtain out of Alabama, Panthers selecting Penei Sewell, trading back and getting their offensive lineman, Eagles selecting Caleb Farley, the cornerback out of Virginia Tech, Chargers selecting Rashawn Slater, Vikings selecting Jalen Phillips, and Lions trading back with the Pats to take Christian Darrisaw. So now we are at number 16 with the Cardinals. The Cardinals have a lot of options here. They can take a wide receiver, maybe, but I think they should go corner. I think that their defense is more of the need right now with that team. And I have them selecting Greg Newsome, the Northwestern corner. And I don't know. I don't know if Greg Newsome is going to be better than J.C. Horn, but I just think his overall press coverage ability sticks out to me, and they both kind of are really good at this. But Greg Newsome's size is fantastic. He's really physical. His only question was really speed, which I think J.C. Horn has a little bit of an advantage on, but he ran the high 4.3s, so that's just not an issue. And this would be one of my favorite picks in the draft, the Cardinals grabbing Greg Newsome at 16. I have the Raiders taking Micah Parsons at number 17. Would be shocked if he fell this far, but again, that's just how this mock draft played out, and people are going to fall. There's a lot of really good football players in the draft that people don't know about, and you just never know. So he's really super fast for the linebacker position, and I think the Raiders are at the point right now where they kind of need to take the best player available on defense at this point. I think it's the best player available, and more specifically on defense, because they really just need help in that department, and Micah Parsons could kind of turn things around for that unit. I have the Dolphins selecting J.C. Horn, the cornerback out of South Carolina. He's a really physical corner, can play tight coverage and press coverage. There's more and more buzz around him. Caleb Farley's injury, I think, is a concern that could see him slide, and J.C. Horn, I think, could go in that top 12, top 10 range, even, just based on the buzz. He's a physical corner. Although they have Xavier Howard on the Dolphins, I just think overall teaming him up with J.C. Horn, you can never have too many cornerbacks, like I said, and that would really make this defense a force to be reckoned with in that division. So, Dolphins selecting J.C. Horn. I also have the football team selecting Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the linebacker out of Notre Dame. So the football team needs a good linebacker. I feel like they haven't had a good linebacker since London Fletcher. And he's expected to be versatile enough in the NFL to be a playmaker in the backfield. Also with the ability to just cover pass catchers, he can do that too. And the football team need this kind of elevation on all fronts of their defense, because the front seven or the front four is really solid. The D-line is really solid. And now the linebackers, the middle linebackers, I think you could use some improving. And this would be a great improvement, someone who can start right away. They could also be looking at a cornerback, depending on who's going. If one of these guys falls, I could see them grabbing Caleb Farley. But overall, football team selecting Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I think this is a great pick. He's probably easily the second best linebacker in this draft. At number 20 overall, I have the Chicago Bears selecting Rashad Bateman, the wide receiver out of Minnesota. I went back and forth on this pick. I really, really took a while contemplating what the Ryan Pace is going to do here. When looking at this draft, the Bears are just in a confusing spot because the roster is constructed in a way where the defensive front is solidified. You have a really young stud linebacker in Roquan Smith. You have Eddie Jackson, a safety who I think will return to all-pro form this season with the new defensive coordinator, Sean Desai, entering the picture. And you have good enough corners on the offensive side of the ball. I just don't know if the playmaking is there and where it's going to come from, because if you have Andy Dalton as your starting quarterback, you need absolute studs around him. Allen Robinson can make big plays, but teams are going to try to shut him down. Darnell Mooney, who I am really, really high on, I think he can make really big plays. So although I think offensive tackle might be the safer move here, just because you need to build that offensive front, because if you don't have a solid O-line this year, if you're the Chicago Bears, then David Montgomery is not going to be creating big plays at a consistent level. So you could go tackle and get that production, but I think wide receiver, getting Andy Dalton weapons, and spreading teams out with these three options of Mooney, Bateman, and Allen Robinson trio, I think is so scary for opposing defenses. But Rashad Bateman is so good. I can't really see... I love his ability as a playmaker. I think he provides the downfield threat that Matt Nagy's offense needs. Ran the high 4.3s so he can make big plays. A really good contested catcher. And I don't know, because I think the Bears are also in a spot where they could trade up at quarterback. I don't think they have the resources necessary to do so, but I can't see them not taking a quarterback this draft. I think it would just be demoralizing for Chicago Bears fans. So I have the Chicago Bears selecting Rashad Bateman, the wide receiver out of Minnesota, getting those skill positions right, and hopefully they can grab a quarterback in the second round. So that will be my that will cap off my top 20 picks in the first round of Wyatt's Mock Draft 2.0. I'm going to get into a quick commercial break. Again, you are listening to the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host, Wyatt Krieger. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at GSMC_football. You can follow me on Twitter at WKrueger3, WKRUEGER3. And also follow us on Instagram. Check out our website at gsmcpodcast.com. And we really appreciate you for listening. Download, subscribe, Spotify, Google Play, Apple Play, anywhere you want to listen to podcasts. I will be right back after this word from our sponsors.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Let's keep on moving along on this mock draft trail. You are again listening to the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host, Wyatt Krieger. We are in the middle of Wyatt's Mock Draft 2.0. You just got done listening to the second commercial break of the episode. And I've got picks 21 through 32 of the first round and then the whole second round to get to today. Let's get started. So the Colts are on the clock at 21. I have been heavy on the Colts needing to draft a wide receiver, and I think Elijah Moore, the wide receiver from Ole Miss, is the best one available. He can be an elusive target out of the slot and can line up on the outside for Carson Wentz. I think wide receiver should be the number one priority for them, and Elijah Moore provides that kind of tough catch playmaking ability, whereas Michael Pittman kind of provides that lateral speed and the shorter routes. I think Elijah Moore can get downfield a little more. So overall, I think if Elijah Moore is added and they can get, a solid free agent during the season or during the off season, or they can pick up someone who can contribute, I think that wide receiving core will be great because that offensive line is fantastic. That running game is already going to be amazing with Marlon Mack and especially Jonathan Taylor. And I just think they need another wide receiver to retool that offense. So Colts getting Elijah Moore at 21. The Titans, I have them selecting Kwity Paye, the Michigan D lineman. Teams kind of knock his overall instincts, but the athletic potential and the athleticism is there. He's 6'2", 260. He's going to play on both the inside and outside of the D line. I think the Titans need to build that front, so that's the best pick for them at 22. Number 23 overall, the New York Jets are back on the clock. I have them taking Azeez Ojulari, one of the best edge rushers in this draft out of Georgia. So he's a real aggressive player. He was named the captain of Georgia's football team, a really solid program, a top 5 program in the country, as a true freshman. So I think that says a lot about his overall football build and makeup. I think guys say that this guy just loves football. He is a 3-4 linebacker, and Robert Saleh runs a 4-3 defense, so I think that could be an issue, but players make that transition all the time, and sometimes it helps them out for the most, but right now he is listed as a 3-4. Overall, I think the Jets still need to add some more playmakers on the defensive side of the ball, and an edge rusher is a huge part of that, and if you can get just any of this potential out of Azeez Ojulari, I think he's going to be someone who's committed, works really hard, and is a leader on the team. So you can't go wrong with this pick out of Georgia, because Georgia guys have ended up pretty good out of the draft the last few years. The number 24, I have the Steelers selecting Najee Harris. I had this in my last mock draft. It just makes too much sense at this point. He's by far the best running back in this draft. He bounces off tackles, can jump over people, can run away from you, can hit the right holes, is elusive, can catch out of the backfield, which I think is huge. And the Steelers need someone like this. I think he can provide everything that James Conner couldn't last season for the Steelers, because he really started to sputter down the stretch as that offense, the running game just slowed down. And I think Najee Harris will be able to pick that up right away, take a lot of the heat off Big Ben, and help kind of take some of the heat off those receivers, because that receiving core is pretty solid, and if you have a running game, then those guys will just get more open. So Steelers taking Najee Harris, I think, is a good pick. The Jaguars, I have another one of my favorite wide receivers in this draft. Wide receivers flying off the board in the first round here, by the way. The Jaguars select Kadarius Toney, the wide receiver out of Florida. Big-time playmaker. I think he can change speeds, gears at a really sudden pace compared to anyone else, maybe in the draft, which just shows his big playability. And with a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, who can put the ball right where it needs to be, I think Kadarius Toney could be a true number 1 in this league. All right, so my final 6 picks of this first round go to the Browns, Ravens, Saints, Packers, Bills, Chiefs, and Buccaneers. All of the best teams in the league last year. Funny how that works out. I'm obviously kidding. That's how it always works out. But just, here we go. 26, the Browns are going to select a linebacker. Zaven Collins, the linebacker out of Tulsa. And I love this prospect. I think a lot of people, I've heard a lot of buzz about this guy more recently, and everyone is saying that if you get Zaven Collins, you're going to get a steal no matter where you get him in the draft. Scouts say he combines a rare size and athleticism just as a bigger outside linebacker. And he's a real team-oriented defender, so he's going to do all of the nitty-gritty things. He's going to stop the run. He's going to rush the passer. He's going to make tackles and fly to the ball whenever he needs to. And he's really rangy, I think. He's a really tough football player. And the Browns' defense, I think, would be completely set if they have this guy at the linebacking level of their defense. Because him and Taki, I think, could be two forces in that front seven. And that front seven is going to be one of the scariest units in the league. So Browns selecting Zaven Collins out of Tulsa. I have the Ravens grabbing Terrace Marshall, the wide receiver out of LSU. I could see them making a move up to Elijah Moore or Kadarius Toney, because I think there's a huge gap between Toney, Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman, and then all the rest of the receivers in this draft. And then you have those other top 3 guys that are going to go really early in Waddle, Smith, and Chase. But Terrace Marshall, man. Terrace Marshall, you can't go wrong with picking an LSU wide receiver, and this is the type of receiver that the Ravens need, that the Lamar needs. A big body, someone who can make big catches, contested catches, and now Lamar kind of has some options here because they have Willie Snead, who's productive out of the slot. Marquise Brown plays in the slot sometimes too. He's been productive as a really speedy threat, and he can make big plays. But Terrace Marshall is that guy that you need to go to on 3rd down, 3rd and 8, second and long, someone you can trust to kind of throw the ball up to. So Terrace Marshall, the Ravens get their wide receiver. That is definitely their biggest position need in this draft. I have the New Orleans Saints at 28 selecting a tackle in Tevin Jenkins out of Oklahoma State. I think the Saints are going to be in kind of the board where they're picking the best player available. It would be great value to get Jenkins this late, and I think they're going to be a defensive-oriented team, and maybe they're going to look defense in the first round, but I think Tevin Jenkins is a high first-round pick on a lot of people's boards, and if he's available at this point, you go take that tackle, because Ryan Ramczyk, his contract is going to need to be extended soon, and you need to have someone next to him to kind of develop and learn that position from an experienced offense. So, New Orleans Saints, Tevin Jenkins. The Packers lost Corey Lindsey this offseason, their star center, to the Chargers. Got to keep protecting Aaron Rodgers. I think this draft should be built for Aaron Rodgers and what he needs, and Elijah Vera Tucker is probably the best player available for them. Although they couldn't get a wide receiver at this point, there are a few available that I really like, but an interior offensive lineman would be huge. They re-signed Aaron Jones, so Aaron Rodgers is going to need the big boys up front to protect him. So Elijah Vera Tucker, the O-lineman, going to the Green Bay Packers. Number 30 overall, I have the Buffalo Bills selecting Rondale Moore. He's one of my draft crushes. I had Kyle Pitts as one of my draft crushes. That's pretty obvious, though. Devontae Smith is another obvious one. But Rondale Moore, he's really one of my draft crushes just because I think he can be a Tyreek Hill style player in this league easily. His size is criticized. He's only around 5'8", 5'7", and that might be an issue, but come on. Imagine Josh Allen throwing deep balls to Rondale Moore when you have Stephon Diggs to already worry about on that team. And then now you added Emmanuel Sanders, who's going to be a player to watch and a player you have to keep note of on the defense. That's just too many guys to handle. And I think the Bills this offseason, when you look at why they lost to the Chiefs, it was because of the speed. And they couldn't keep up with the speed of the Chiefs. So there's two ways you can combat that. You can get a really good pass rush like the Buccaneers had on Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, or you can combat speed with more speed. And Rondale Moore is the definition of speed and adding that sort of skill set to your team. It's what you need to beat the Chiefs. So I think the Bills would be really smart in grabbing Rondale Moore. This might be a reach in the first round, but I don't care. I think Josh Allen will throw so many touchdowns to this guy if he's on the Bills. I have the Chiefs selecting Alex Leatherwood, the offensive tackle out of Alabama. Another great value pick here. Will start right away and fills the voids that the Chiefs left this offseason at guard and tackle. And that's the thing. Leatherwood has experience at both guard and tackle, good in run game. I think it's projected that he will start at tackle and then move on to guard at some point. That's like a career path a lot of guys take, just because tackle is a little easier to learn at the NFL level. But overall, that'd be a great pick for them. At number 32, the Buccaneers, I have them selecting Christian Barmore, the Alabama defensive tackle, another really smart player, another guy that's going to come in from Nick Saban's defense and be able to contribute right away and be really instinctive overall. I think this is another great value pick. He's probably going to go in the late teens, I would assume, but just the way this draft planned out, the Buccaneers, you got to get your guy and get Christian Barmore, because that would be the smartest move. I know there's some edge rushers available that are prime right now, in Greg Rousseau and some other guys, but just take Christian Barmore. You will not be upset with that pick. All right, we're going to start to get into the second round, and this is where it gets interesting because you start to see guys with more question marks and guys with less overall credibility. You start to see teams that didn't have first-round picks get their first picks of the draft, and those are technically their first-round picks. Like, for example, this year the Seahawks and the Rams have no first-round picks but have second-round picks. So it'll be interesting how this plays out. I have a little bit of a surprise at 33 with the Jags taking Travis Etienne, the running back out of Clemson. Although they have James Robinson, I think you just need to add as many playmakers for Lawrence as possible. Just the familiarity there, being a former teammate with Lawrence, I think would help him a lot. Etienne and James Robinson could be one of the most lethal young duos of running backs in the league by far. and just that overall youth and athleticism on the offense so far with this draft and with the personnel on their team now, I think would be huge. And Travis Etienne, he makes big plays. He did it at the highest level for Clemson. He did it for 3-4 years, and he's going to keep doing it at the NFL. I have no doubt about that. So the Jets, I have the Jets taking yet another edge rusher. The Jets are going all in on edge rushers. I have them taking Greg Rousseau, the Miami edge rusher, because he's probably the second best edge rusher in this draft. I would assume he's a top 5 for sure. And him and Chase Young were the only players in college football with 15.5 sacks in 2019. So the potential and the production is there. He opted out in 2020, so it's kind of labeled as a boom or bust pick, which is why you could see him start to fall like he is in this draft. But overall, the Jets getting 2 solid pass rushing prospects in the draft while after also getting your quarterback, I think is just an awesome plan to go with. And giving Robert Saleh that many young tools to work with is going to be scary for AFC East contenders. So the Jets taking Greg Rousseau from Miami. I have a second-round trade up here at 35. The Falcons were on the clock, but guess what? I have the Bears trading up and taking Kellen Mond. This might be a huge reach, but overall, this comes from my mindset where the Bears have to get a quarterback, and Kellen Mond's stock is rising. I think he's one of the only guys, the only second-tier guys that is really going to go early in the second round. Davis Mills, the other one from Stanford, being a possibility, but he just has too many question marks. And Kellen Mond, this would be a huge trade, and I wouldn't hate this move if I was a Bears fan because his throwing motion is a little unique. It's a little unorthodox, but he has a big arm regardless. And you've seen a lot of guys succeed in the NFL with weird throwing motions, guys like Colin Kaepernick, Phillip Rivers, to name a few. And I don't think that matters. I think those are things that you make adjustments with on the fly. But the Bears have to take a quarterback. I just need that point to get across because it would be so demoralizing for their fan base to go into that season, 2021 season, no matter what skill position players you get. If it's just Andy Dalton and Nick Foles, Bears fans are going to be so upset, and there's just not a lot of optimism there. You have to give fans some sort of optimism. Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy are on the hot seat, so I don't like the idea of just making moves just to please the fan base. But at the end of the day, the Bears are in a position where they need to take stabs at quarterback, and this is one of the better quarterback drafts in history. It likely will be, and Kellen Mond could be one of those guys that falls late. Didn't project as one of the best guys, but has all the tools. And if he can learn Matt Nagy's offense, I think that'll be a great pick for the Bears. It's going to take some time. Probably would take some time. So I have the Dolphins taking another skill position player, and this time it's Javonte Williams, the UNC running back. I watched this guy a lot in college. I think he's a stud. He has great elusiveness. He's really short, but he's compact and strong. And he really just has a unique ability to bounce off tackles, I think. And the Dolphins need another playmaker out of the backfield. They saw what they could get out of Myles Gaskin, but you need 2 running backs in today's NFL. They get hurt at least once a year, and they take a lot of hits. So you need to have guys rotating in and out, kind of similar to the Jags or what the Jags would be doing with Travis Etienne. And Javonte Williams is another guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield, played with an elite group of skill set players at UNC. And I think he could help out Tua Tagovailoa a lot. Number 37, I have the Eagles taking Amari Rodgers, the Clemson wide receiver. He's slightly small at 5'9", but he's the true definition of a playmaker. He can make plays and be utilized in a lot of different ways. He's not great after the catch. He gets brought down pretty easily. But overall, just the different things you can do in terms of motions, trick plays, moving him side to side across the field, using that speed that he has. I think Amari Rodgers is a great pick here for the Eagles. At 38, I have the Bengals taking Samuel Cosmi, out of the offensive tackle out of Texas. The Bengals need Joe Burrow to get some protection and they got Jamar Chase. They got him all the weapons he needs in the first round. Now it's time to protect Joe Burrow. We can't have another knee injury for him. And overall, you needed that tackle. You need that foundational piece on the offensive line. And I think Samuel Cosmi provides that out of Texas. I have the Panthers at number 39, selecting Eric Stokes, the Georgia cornerback. I think his versatility will bode really well in the Panthers' defense. He can play in the slot or outside. A lot of scouts say strength is his one weakness, but overall, just his overall football instincts, I think, are superior to some of the quarterbacks ranked ahead of him. And the Panthers would be getting a good one because this is a big need for them on that defensive side of the ball. At number 40, I have the Broncos selecting Jamin Davis, the Kentucky linebacker. A lot of guys have him as a first-round talent, and I have him sliding in this draft. The Broncos would be foolish to kind of pass up on him at this point. They need help bolstering that defense with at the linebacker position, and I think they would be somewhat set on all three levels. And overall, Jamin Davis, first-round talent, getting him this late at 40, I think would be a huge grab for the Broncos. So Jamin Davis from Kentucky. The Lions are going to select Joe Tryon, the edge rusher out of Washington, another first-round talent, another guy that I've seen late in the first round, and even as high as 20 in the 20s in the first round, early 20s. He's another 2020 opt-out, but shined in 18 and 19. He's 6'5", 260, but he's going to get labeled as a boomer bust just because of the question marks, and you don't know. There's just not enough recent tape, but I think the Lions need production out of the pass rush. It's another thing they haven't had in a while, and Joe Tryon, I think Joe Tryon can try his best for Detroit. I think he will. Washington defenders also have a good history in the draft, so keep an eye on that. I have the Giants going defense and selecting Javon Holland, the safety out of Oregon. Javon is a great talent. He's another 2020 opt-out, 10th in the FBS in interceptions as a true freshman, which is pretty remarkable. And Joe Judge needs another playmaker in the secondary. They added Adoree Jackson. James Bradbury is one of the bright young corners in this league, so I would not mind the Giants reaching and getting Javon Holland, the safety out of Oregon. At 43, the 49ers, I have them taking Landon Dickerson, an inside O-lineman out of Alabama. To pair with Mac Jones, I think that's just a great, solid pick. Can't go wrong with that. The Cowboys, I have them selecting Liam Eichenberg out of Notre Dame. Always good to draft tackles, especially when you have the experience on that offensive line that you do in Dallas. And a guy like Eichenberg can come from a system in Notre Dame that produces NFL offensive linemen, will likely be ready to play, but he will probably get some time on the bench and some time in practice to learn and develop, and who knows, maybe he can work his way into a starting role because the Cowboys' offensive line has been dealing with a lot of injuries the last few seasons, so you need to work young guys in and year out and see where they fit on this team. So, I've got the Jags back on the clock at 45, and I have them selecting Peyton Turner, the edge rusher out of Houston. He's 6'5", 270 pounds, just a massive human. He has production across the board in tackles for loss, sacks, pass breakups. He's a do-it-all guy. Jags need a guy like this on their defense because they've lost a lot of that defensive talent that they used to have when they were going to AFC Championship games for that one season. So, Peyton Turner, Houston edge, goes to Jacksonville. I have the football team trading up with the New England Patriots at 46. The football team really needs a quarterback, and I'm going to have them grab the best cornerback available in Kelvin Joseph out of Kentucky. He originally went to LSU, so he has a good track record there. Started only 9 games and had almost 30 tackles with 4 interceptions. So the talent overall is there, but he got kicked out of LSU he got kicked off the team for violating team rules. So I think there are some off-field concerns that are notable that may make him slide, but overall the talent is there, and the football team needs another cornerback on that defense to really just solidify all 3 levels of their defense. Then I have the Chargers selecting Carlos Basham Jr., edge rusher out of Wake Forest. I think they need to fill the void of Melvin Ingram. Joey Bosa is still going to be a stud next year. he's going to be incredible. And Carlos Basham will be able to get a lot of single teams and a lot of free looks at the quarterback. So I think that'll be great for his young confidence. So I'm going to get into a quick commercial break again. I wanted to get into some of my picks in the second round. Starting at the end of the first round, I had the Browns selecting Zaven Collins, the Ravens selecting Terrace Marshall, the New Orleans Saints selecting Tevin Jenkins, the tackle out of Oklahoma State, the Packers selecting Elijah Vera Tucker, interior O-lineman, the Bills selecting Rondale Moore, the Chiefs selecting Alex Leatherwood, the offensive tackle out of Alabama, and the Buccaneers selecting Christian Barmore. I have the Jags selecting Travis Etienne, the Jets selecting Trevon Moehrig, the TCU safety. The Bears trading up and grabbing their quarterback that they need so desperately in Kellen Mond. I don't know if he's the future, but he's a quarterback. I can tell you that much. The Dolphins grabbing Javonte Williams at 36, and then the Eagles grabbing Amari Rodgers, the Clemson wide receiver, at 37. And then I have the Bengals at 38, taking Samuel Cosmi. The Panthers selecting Eric Stokes, the corner out of Georgia. The Broncos selecting the linebacker out of Kentucky, Jamin Davis. The Lions selecting Joe Tryon, an edge rusher out of Washington. And the Giants selecting Javon Holland, a safety out of Oregon. At 43, I have the 49ers taking Landon Dickerson, interior offensive lineman. The Cowboys selecting an offensive tackle in Liam Eichenberg from Notre Dame. The Jags selecting Peyton Turner from Houston as an edge rusher. The football team trading up with New England to select cornerback Calvin Joseph, and the Chargers bolstering that defensive front with edge rusher Carlos Basham Jr. Once again, you're listening to the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host, Wyatt Krieger. Be sure to like, download, and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Play, or Google Play, or go to our website and check out all of the wonderful content that the Golden State Media Concepts have to offer. We literally have podcasts about any topic that you could possibly want to listen to. So I'll be right back after this quick commercial break to finish my mock draft and then get into my top 10 quarterbacks.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
All right, welcome back for the final segment of the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm Wyatt Krieger, your host for today's episode. You're listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. As always, follow us on Twitter at GSMC_football and follow us on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter at WKrieger3. And be sure to check out all the content Golden State Media has to offer on our website at gsmcpodcast.com. I have my final picks in my mock draft, picks number 48 through 64 of my mock draft 2.0. And we're starting it off with the Las Vegas Raiders, who I have them selecting Brady Christensen, a BYU offensive tackle. They need to really start retooling that offensive line. They lost 3 starters this offseason, so I think that's just a huge priority in the early rounds for the Raiders. If not the first, then definitely the second, which I have them doing here. Christensen was great with Zach Wilson last year, the projected first round quarterback, and I think this is a solid pick. This is someone who can start right away, who's a smart football player, and someone who has experience playing with a really good quarterback. So I have the Raiders selecting Brady Christensen. The Cardinals, I have them selecting Jabril Cox. He had the most tackles for loss and 6 sacks in 2019 as a third-team All-SEC player. He's a little undersized, but overall, I think he flies to the ball, and that's something you need as a linebacker in today's NFL because he has the pedigree from LSU, and he played on a great defense, but he's kind of that modern day linebacker that can do a lot of different things, that can cover the nickels, that cover the tight ends, and pass rush, but he doesn't have that necessarily size that to be a big productive tackler in the NFL. Who knows? We'll see if he can add a little bit of a weight into his build, but still 10 tackles for loss and 6 sacks in 2019. I think that's very productive. Third team All-SEC player on that great SEC team, on that great LSU team. So I don't think the Cardinals would mind pairing up Jabril Cox with Isaiah Simmons, who they drafted last year, two modern-day NFL linebackers. I have the Dolphins at number 50, selecting Nick Bolton, the linebacker out of Missouri. He is really good in pursuit. He's a little undersized as well at 6'3". The Dolphins added a wide receiver, running back, D-line, and linebacker so far in this draft with all the picks they have. So they're spreading around talent in my eyes. And Nick Bolton, the linebacker out of Missouri, I think is a great pick from the SEC that you can hope to develop into a solid linebacker in the NFL one day. The Patriots, who traded back with the Washington football team, are getting their receiver. They need a weapon outside, and I'm going to go with De'Ami Brown, the UNC wide receiver. He was extremely productive last year, and as a true freshman, he had 20 yards per reception, 12 touchdowns, and 13 games. So I think that overall production has to stick out to Bill Belichick when he's scouting wide receivers. And the past drafts, in terms of wide receivers, have not been great for Bill Belichick. When you look at guys like N'Keal Harry out of Arizona State, who just has not panned out well. But I think Bill Belichick can get something out of De'Ami Brown, and this UNC wide receiver is just really athletic, a really solid football player, and someone who's going to be who's going to produce. I think right away he's going to be able to make plays and wow some people at training camp, but it might take some time to learn that offense and to learn all the complexities of Bill Belichick's as a head coach. So the Patriots selecting De'Ami Brown, the UNC wide receiver. I have the Falcons trading back with the Bears, and now they are on the clock at 52. So the Falcons, I have them selecting Aaron Robinson, the cornerback out of UCF. Scouts rave about this guy's hips. As weird as it is to say, he has great hips. He can turn laterally, side to side. He can really open up and catch up to the receivers and pass catchers that are trying to run away from him. He specializes kind of in the nickel spot, but the Falcons were able to get A.J. Terrell from Clemson last year, who I think made some great plays for them. I think he's a bright young spot on that defense for the outside. And then having Aaron Robinson, who's a true playmaker at that nickel spot, I think would be great. Former Alabama transfer, so he has that pedigree in his history, and I don't think the Falcons could go wrong with picking defense because they can't get thrown all over again like they did last year, especially in that talented division. At number 53, I have the Titans taking a familiar name in Asante Samuel Jr., the son of Asante Samuel, the longtime Eagles quarterback. I think this would be great value for the Titans. A lot of people view him as a late first-rounder. They let Adoree Jackson go this offseason. They need more help in the secondary with Malcolm Butler. And Asante Samuel was a longtime great cornerback in the NFL, so he has that to his name because as much as people think that doesn't matter, it definitely matters. When you have a father that's kind of mentoring you and teaching you the ins and the outs of the NFL and what's expected, then you kind of already have that mutual understanding of what's expected in the league. So Asante Samuel, I see him as a guy that can transition quickly to the NFL, and the Titans would be a great landing spot for him. At 54, I have the Colts selecting Dylan Raduns. The Colts are still in the market for a new tackle to solidify their O-line for the next 5 years, and they would be able to do that with this tackle in Dylan Raduns. The inside of the O-line is pretty shored up with Quentin Nelson at center or at guard, who I think is going to be one of the best offensive linemen of all time after what we've seen so far. Center Ryan Kelly and Mark Glowinski they're pretty solid in that interior line, but Dylan Redunz I think would shore up them as one of the best and most solid units for the next 5 seasons. At 55, I have the Steelers taking Levi Onwuzurike, the edge rusher out of Washington. Another COVID opt-out. Not a lot of recent tape, but the Steelers need more pass rush after losing Bud Dupree, and Levi Onwuzurike has that potential to come in and help TJ Watt and take some of that pressure off of TJ Watt, as he's going to be getting double-teamed quite a bit next year in Pittsburgh. The Seahawks have their first pick of the draft at number 56, and I have them taking Ifeatu Melifonwu. This is a fun name to say. Ifeatu Melifonwu, the cornerback out of Syracuse. He's a perfect size for a corner at 6'2", 200 pounds. The Seahawks lost Shaquille Griffin last year to the Jaguars and didn't have a first-round pick. So I think it's really important. This draft pick is really important for them to get an impact player. They're pretty set on all facets of the offense other than offensive line. I think they could definitely kind of go after an offensive lineman here. But that defense has been the heel, although it wasn't really in the latter half of the year and in the playoffs. I think that defense has been a consistent struggle for them, and they need a lockdown corner that they can keep around for a while. And losing Shaquille Griffin, I think, doesn't help that at all. So retooling that immediately and getting a young cornerback in would help a lot in Seattle. The Rams, I have them taking a surefire great pick in Creed Humphrey, the interior offensive lineman out of Oklahoma. He was an extremely consistent center last year at Oklahoma at a big-time program. The Rams also didn't have a first-rounder. I don't think the Rams have a first-rounder for the next 20 years. But nonetheless, they get their offensive linemen that they need to help protect Matt Stafford and really just solidify that running game, which I think is going to be great with Cam Akers looking to build off a great rookie year last year. So they need to have that run game for Matt Stafford. That's something he hasn't really had in Detroit ever. So if you can get Matt Stafford a run game, get those play actions going and really open up that offense, then the Rams are going to be one of the best teams in the NFC. At 58, I have the Ravens selecting Ronnie Perkins, the edge rusher out of Oklahoma. He's 6'3", 250 pounds, which is a great frame for him for an edge rusher. He plays really hard. He has the right burst and get off that you need at the edge position, and he might be more suited to kind of be a stand-up 3-4 rusher at the next level, but the Ravens will be able to figure that out and just kind of add to that scary defensive front that they always have in Baltimore, no matter what. Right after the Ravens, I have the 59th pick, the Browns. They're taking Elijah Molden, the safety out of Washington. He led all Huskies in tackles, which is hard to do as a safety. So he's a willing tackler and can make plays on ball carriers. Can play a multitude of positions, including safety, corner, does a lot of special teams, and that's something that I think adds a lot of value, just being a guy that can do it all and can contribute on special teams right away and be a playmaker, because that's what I think Elijah Molden can do. I have the Saints selecting Jamar Johnson, the safety out of Indiana, to kind of help retool their back end of the defense. You don't know how much longer Marcus Williams is going to be there, but Jamar Johnson, I think, provides a bright young spot in that secondary. There's also a lot of news with Marshawn Lattimore after he had an altercation with the police. There was a gun involved. He had an unlicensed gun, I believe, and there's just a lot of question marks there with Marshawn Lattimore. I think he will be fine to play, but overall, not a good situation for the Saints star cornerback. They need to get more help in the secondary. Jamar Johnson, safety out of Indiana. At 61, I have the Bills taking Joseph Osai, an edge rusher out of Texas. I have the Packers at 62, taking safety Richie Grant out of UCF. He's one of the more experienced defensive backs in the draft. He played 2,650 snaps, over 2,650 snaps at UCF. He's great in the run game, and I think the Packers need to keep adding guys like this in their secondary, because they had guys like Jair Alexander step up big. Kevin King stepped up in some big moments, but they need to have that back end solidified if they want to make another run at the Super Bowl, because Tom Brady was able to pick apart that secondary at times during the NFC Championship game. At 63, I have the Chiefs selecting Wyatt Davis, the interior offensive lineman out of Ohio State. I believe this is the first Ohio State player off the board, which would be absolutely crazy if it took this long to the very end of the second round for an Ohio State player to go off the board. I don't think that's likely, but pretty crazy when you look at it, because I want to know the official stats here, but I feel like an Ohio State player has gone in the first round at least every year for the past 10 years. I could be definitely wrong on that, but I just noticed there were no Ohio State players. Ohio State, you got to do some more to get on my board, get on my mock draft 2.0. So Ohio State, I think that Wyatt Davis is a great offensive lineman. The Chiefs already selected a tackle in the first round in this mock draft, so they already replaced those two voids that really doomed them in the Super Bowl last season, and I just think that's a great pick for Kansas City. At 64, the final pick of my mock draft 2.0, I have the Bucs taking Davion Nixon, an edge rusher out of Iowa. Can't go wrong with an edge rusher out of the Big Ten. So in my final picks, I had the 49ers taking Landon Dickerson out of Alabama. I already went through those. I had the Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders selecting Brady Christensen out of BYU. The Arizona Cardinals selecting Jabril Cox out of LSU. The Dolphins selecting Nick Bolton, the linebacker out of Missouri. The Patriots selecting De'Ami Brown in their trade back with the Washington football team and taking De'Ami Brown, the UNC wide receiver. The Falcons selecting Aaron Robinson, the cornerback out of UCF. A lot of UCF guys off the board in this draft. The Titans taking Asante Samuel Jr. The Colts taking Dylan Runs. The Steelers taking Levi Owunzurike out of Washington, the edge rusher. The Seahawks taking Ifitu Melifonwu, the cornerback out of Syracuse. The Rams taking Creed Humphrey, the interior offensive line, after not having a first-round pick out of Oklahoma. Then finally, I have the Ravens taking Ronnie Perkins, adding an edge rusher. The Browns taking Elijah Molden, a safety out of Washington. The Saints taking another safety in Jamar Johnson. The Bills taking Joseph Osai, another edge rusher out of Texas. The Packers taking safety Richie Grant out of UCF. And then the Chiefs solidifying that front seven on the offensive side of the ball with Wyatt Davis out of Ohio State. And then the Buccaneers taking Davion Nixon, an edge rusher out of Iowa. So real quick, I wanted to get into some of my top quarterbacks in the league right now, year to date. So I'm going to quickly get into that, and because I did my wide receivers last year, now I want to do quarterbacks. It's the most important position of all the sports. I'm starting it off with the pretty obvious answer here, Patrick Mahomes. He does things that no quarterback has ever done. He's sneaky athletic, avoids sacks all the time. Even in the Super Bowl, he was making plays that would have been some of the best plays quarterbacks have ever made, just completely falling down, diving across the field, throwing sidearm that guys just couldn't catch, was hitting their receivers in the helmets. All the arm angles, the velocity, the throws deep. I think it's completely changed the NFL and changed the way that teams want to draft quarterbacks. And yes, he has some of the best skill position players on his team and one of the best coaches, but he's really the thing that makes everything work in Kansas City, because you saw they had Alex Smith, who's a serviceable quarterback, and then you had Patrick Mahomes come in and take him to the top. Number 2, I have Aaron Rodgers, another guy that just can do whatever he wants with the football, can put it wherever he wants, makes everything look effortless. He just flicks his wrist and the ball just goes a million miles an hour at a perfect spiral right to where he wants it to. Would be surprised if he didn't get one more ring before his career's over, whether it's in Green Bay or not, because I see him being a huge grudge guy and going to another team and wanting to prove himself somewhere else. At number 3 overall, I have the Tom Brady, the GOAT, and the reigning Super Bowl champ at the third best quarterback in the NFL. Although there's probably some guys that are more talented at this point in their careers, you can't argue with the best competitor and winner of all time and the reigning Super Bowl champ. So Tom Brady at 4. I've got Russell Wilson at 5. Threw too many interceptions last year, but I expect a better year from him. They came out really hot on offense. He throws one of the better deep balls in the league, deep balls that go so high and just drop in a bucket, as some would say. The offense came out really hot, but you never know. They really slowed down in the second half of the year, and you never know if Seattle is going to truly let Russ cook. So we'll see how that plays out. Deshaun Watson, I have him at number 5. Despite the ongoing drama and the uncertainty, he's definitely a top quarterback in the league right now. He led the league in passing. He's elusive. He's smart. He's a proven winner. And he needs a defense and supporting roster around him. And that's what I was really excited for this season, is seeing Deshaun Watson on a new team. And I thought whatever team got him was going to be Super Bowl contenders right away. And now we might not get to see that because of all of these allegations and all of the misconduct that is being alleged. So Deshaun Watson, I still have him as the 5th best quarterback in the NFL right now. Right behind him, I have Josh Allen, another guy with effortless arm strength. He really just put it all together last year. Another example of a guy who just grinded. I really thought he was going to be a bust from the start. I thought he was just so inaccurate and threw way too many interceptions. And also just the way early on in his first few seasons, the way Bill Belichick teams always just defensively shut the Bills down, I think was pretty remarkable. And it said a lot about how Bill Belichick can take advantage of inexperienced quarterbacks. But last year, that was not the case. The Bills were so much better than the Patriots, and Josh Allen showed that week in and week out. Lamar Jackson, I have him at 7, the former MVP. I hate people saying he's not a quarterback. Get him some weapons. See what he can do. Get him a receiver in this draft. I see a guy who makes quick decisions in the pocket. He throws to the sideline. He throws it over middle well, and his arm strength is definitely there. People just like to make up narratives and stick with what their original thought was, but rushing touchdowns and rushing ability counts whether you're a quarterback or not, and he can pass. I'm not concerned about his passing at all. And you can talk about the playoffs. There was one play in that Bills game where it's that one play. It's one interception. Both teams, that was a defensive battle, and it was one interception that cost them the game in the red zone. And that's one play. I'm not too worried about it. I still think he's a guy that's going to win you so many games in the regular season, and I think it's a matter of time before he breaks through in the playoffs. So at 8, I have Justin Herbert, the Rookie of the Year. I think this guy's going to be a top 10 quarterback for the next 20 years. Can make all the throws, has great size and height overall, and just has a really strong arm. Was really consistent last year, which I think is what stuck out to me week in and week out. He was always on his game. At number 9, I have Kyler Murray. Truly a fantasy football favorite, a true playmaker. You kind of started to see some inconsistency in the second half of the year and kind of some holes in the Cliff Kingsbury offense, but he can break a 90-yard play through the air or the ground at any time, and there's not many guys you can say about that at the end of the day. But this year, I will say, is a make-or-break year for Kyler, I think, just because obviously he's going to be a quarterback in this league for a long time. I just think it's a make-or-break year for the Cardinals, and they also have to start making some personnel decisions and some maybe head coaching regime decisions if they cannot make the playoffs this year. So now I have Baker Mayfield as coming in as the 10th best quarterback in the NFL. He epitomizes kind of just what a starting quarterback is, the moxie, the confidence, the personality, and he really started to run the offense to perfection last year. I think he's due for a breakout season. I think he's going to be possibly in the MVP category based on how good the Browns do this year. So I have Baker Mayfield coming in as the 10th best quarterback. Some honorable mentions I may have left off are Ryan Tannehill, who had a great season last year, and Matt Ryan. But overall, that's my top 10. And that's who I think are the top 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL. So that wraps it up for today's show. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Football Podcast presented by the GSMC Podcast Network. I can't wait for next week's draft. I will have a full recap of the first round of action next week with overall draft grades coming out the week after that. Until then, I hope everyone has a great weekend/week. And this is Wyatt Krieger signing off for the GSMC Football Podcast. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.